Late last month, Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas and Congressman Crenshaw of Texas launched a campaign encouraging military members to reach out to them if they're, quote, being taught that the military is a systematically racist institution, that America is a fundamentally racist country, or that any race of Americans is inherently an oppressor or victim, end quote. Well, we're beginning to find out more firsthand just how prevalent this is. Earlier today, during a Senate Armed Services Committee, Senator Cotton gives a sampling of what's included in the reading list that the Admiral, the Chief of Navy Operations, Admiral Michael Gilday, is promoting to sailors. Watch this.
It's a criticism of your decision to include these books on your professional reading list, which ensigns and sailors across your service take very seriously. So I just want to give you a sampling of some of the things that are included in books like this, that the notion that capitalism is essentially racist and racism is essentially capitalist, that the only remedy for past discrimination is present discrimination, the only remedy for present discrimination is future discrimination, that some individuals, by virtue of his or her race, are inherently oppressive or privileged, while others are victimized or oppressed.
Joining me now from Capitol Hill is Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Tony, thanks for having me back on.
I watched the exchange between you and Admiral Gilday today, and quite frankly, was shocked that he would have these books on his reading list. And then when you specifically asked him if he thought capitalism was racist, he refused to answer the question twice.
Yeah, Tony, it was a disappointing exchange. Admiral Gilday had a similar exchange last week with the House Armed Services Committee, and we discussed it on the phone as well. He's very dug in on his bad decision to include these books by charlatans on critical race theory on his professional reading list. It would have been better for him, when this was first brought to his attention, simply confess error and acknowledge the reality that it was probably some clueless colonel who recommended these books in the first place. But they really have no business being on a service chief's reading list. Those reading lists should be focused on teaching young officers and young troopers how to lead, how to perform their craft well, how to learn from the history and biographies of those that went before them. They should be focused on teaching about how to win real wars, not culture wars.
Well, I thought you made an extremely poignant illustration when you went through a litany of naval problems within the Navy. One in particular you pointed to was a few years back under the Obama administration, when a Navy vessel was captured by basically an Iranian speedboat. They surrendered to them, and part of the problem back then was the training that had nothing to do with military training, everything to do with diversity, everything to do with the sexual components that the Obama administration put on it. But it's even worse today. And I think through your outreach, you're hearing that from members of the military.
I am, Tony. Congressman Crenshaw and I have opened up a line of communication for our service members in any rank to anonymously and confidentially submit stories we've heard. It's very alarming what we've seen from frontline unit training to the service academies to our professional military schools like the war colleges, for instance. It's not just about matters on race and gender theories, but we hear stories of majors and colonels having to sit through classes on climate change, when they should, again, be focused on tactical and operational excellence and developing leadership skills. These are all things that, at a minimum, waste a lot of time for our young and mid-career troopers, but also probably undermine morale and unit cohesion and integrity by teaching them that the most important thing about each other is not who they are as an individual or the fact that they all raised their hand, took an oath to our Constitution and to defend it and to fight for the man and woman on the right or left, but rather it's their race. And I suspect that China and Russia, if they wanted to try to undermine unit morale and unit cohesion, would probably not think of a much better strategy than assigning books like Ibrahim Kendi's writings, which are openly calling for racially discriminatory policies by governments at all levels.
Senator Cotton, I'm certain that the level of correspondence that I've gotten from members of the military pales in comparison to what you have gotten, because I've not intentionally reached out, but I do have a lot of military members that listen to this program, and I get email correspondence. You talk about morale. One of the things that I've seen and read from those members is that many of them who have the time are going to get out. They're wanting to exit the military. I have to believe that this type of focus in our military is going to hurt retention and I would think hurt recruiting.
Yeah, I don't think there's much doubt about that, Tony. We've heard that directly from service members. You know, we heard from one person who said that he was tired of these indoctrination sessions and he didn't think he was going to be able to get ahead in a military that's so focused on these issues as opposed to tactical and operational excellence, and he planned to leave when his enlistment contract was up. We heard from another officer who had a young woman who said that she did not realize the Air Force was such a racist institution when she enlisted, and she never would have enlisted if that was the case. These are the kind of things that kind of silently corrode morale and cohesion, and ultimately get back to points you raised, retaining our best people and recruiting the best people as well.
Senator Cotton, I want to address a remedy. Because, you know, there's a lot of problems in the Biden administration, and given the current makeup of Congress, there's very little we can do. But you have put something on the table that actually we used back during the Obama years to remind these officers that, look, you're there in our nation's military, and you're supposed to be beyond politics. But each one of those general officers, once they hit those 1 and 2 stars, they got to come before the Senate to have that promotion confirmed. And so you, as a senator, you guys play a role in whether or not these men and women have what it takes to truly lead a military that can defend this country.
Yeah, Tony, we get thousands, like tens of thousands of military promotions every year in front of the Armed Services Committee in the Senate, down to lieutenants. It is just a matter of course to voice those out in blocks of hundreds or thousands from the committee and then do the same thing on the Senate floor. We don't have to do that, though. Now, I'm not talking about holding up nominations for lieutenants to become captains, but, you know, there are not that many generals in our military. And it wouldn't be that hard to scrutinize their commands and to see whether or not they've permitted or even encouraged these kind of quasi-struggle sessions in their command. And that may be something that we have to start considering if the Department of Justice doesn't take this seriously. Now, some of this I think it's good just that you're talking about it, that I'm highlighting in these hearings, that we have this whistleblower site, because it shines a lot of sunlight on the problem, and a lot of these commanders probably don't want the political controversy, and they'd be happy to fight, again, to focus on fighting real wars as opposed to being enlisted in culture wars by the Democrats in charge of the Department of Defense and at the White House. So I hope that just the sunlight itself will help solve the problem. But if it doesn't, we may need to take further action.
Well, there are some, I was just reading a couple of articles where there are some officers in the military that are aggressively pursuing this, using as an opportunity. We saw the same things back during the Obama years. So I think different tactics are going to be required to weed those type of individuals out of the leadership of our nation's military that are using this as an opportunity to advance a leftist agenda. Senator, before we run out of time, I want to make sure, as I mentioned, we have a number of active duty, military, reservists that listen to this program across the country. How can they get information to you?
It's very simple, Tony. They can get our contact information at my website, cotton.senate.gov. Again, we've heard from hundreds of service members and veterans over just the last month. We would encourage anyone listening who has similar stories they want to share, concerns they've seen, whether it's in their unit or in one of these schools, they should contact us. We'll keep their information confidential. They can even do so anonymously if they choose. But the more that we can gather in terms of information from the front lines about what's happening at our service, the harder it will be for some of the political appointees at the Department of Defense and some of these, frankly, politicized flag officers from denying what is happening in their commands and their services.
So what's the plan? What will you be doing with this, and when might you do something with it?
So probably the first step we'll have to take legislative action on the matter will be next month, when the Senate begins the process of writing the annual defense bill in the Armed Services Committee. As I said, I may also have to stop granting consent to just wave through nominations for promotion of general officers. And like I said, I do hope that a lot of the sunlight that we're shining on this, both in your program and other forums, help senior military leaders realize that they need to knock it off and they need to get back to real wars, not culture wars.
So outside the military, those who are concerned about national security, that are concerned about the direction they see our military going, knowing that oftentimes it's a vanguard to the culture, what can they do at this point?
You know, in the lead-in, Tony, I heard you talking about your school board boot camp. I think that is a great initiative. And over the last few months, I have been encouraging more and more Arkansans, and when I travel the country, more Americans, to get involved in local school board races. These are grassroots politics at their best. At most, maybe a few yard signs and a few Google ads, Facebook pages. This is people acting in their community in the best interests of their children, best interests of our country. And if you have concerns about what your children are learning, or you have concerns if you're an empty nester, you haven't had kids yet, about what your school is teaching the future of your community and the future of our country, I would encourage all of your listeners to think about a run for school board. There may be no greater value in terms of the input it takes to run and win a campaign and the effect you can have on the country's future than your local school board.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think what we're seeing, the fertile soil for the leftist agenda in the military was prepared in our public schools a decade or so ago. Senator Tom Cotton, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll encourage the men and women who serve in our nation's military that have seen these things up front and personal to reach out to your website and get that information to you.